Thank you for coming back. Those that are entering the room can just sort of shuffle in quietly after coffee and cake. And what I'd also like to say is that one of our panelists is yet to actually be up on stage, so I want a raucous round of applause when Matt Coleman comes into the room and comes and joins us on stage, please, as loud as you can make it, just to make sure he can slip in without being noticed. That would be great. My name's Paul Hutton. I wear a variety of hats in this industry, which I somehow fell into being involved in 25 years ago now. I am the Transport Technology Forum Communications Lead, and I also own the esteemed website Highways News, which I hope you hang on every word. And if you're looking at your phone in the next few minutes, you will be forgiven only if you are looking at the midday briefing that should be coming in on your email any minute. Other than that, please concentrate on our panelists. 5/6 of them are on the stage at the moment, but you'll find out who they are when we watch this video of our working groups. Now, working groups met yesterday, and we'll be talking about that in a moment. But what I wanted to do was give you a flavour of the working groups. There are the 6 represented in this session, plus Streetwise as well. All of this, thankfully, or thanks to AECOM for supporting. They supported our working group meetings yesterday, and we'll have a little video to set the scene as to what the working groups are up to.
Hello, my name is Mark Stapley. I'm Associate Director for AECOM, and AECOM are pleased to be sponsoring the Department for Transport's working groups at the Transport Technology Forum Conference. These working groups are essential building blocks for the development of traffic technology, bringing together the various subject matter experts from across the UK to help deliver a more collaborative approach for the future of traffic technology. In addition, our direct involvement with the working groups and the TTF Conference in general helps keep our technology service teams at the forefront when it comes to best practice and emerging technical applications. We've been involved in the technology guidance for the DFT's last user priority LTN note, and have used these insights from some of these working groups to inform our research.
Recently we had a webinar which was focused about new and upcoming sources of data, because every year new people come up with new ways of collecting data and new sources. So we had some interesting things about weather data, about collision data, about emergency vehicle data. We produced a list of data for the ITMF bids in terms of stuff that's already there that you can use for free that you might not know about. And we'll be hoping that particularly people who are doing bids aren't reinventing the wheel by collecting stuff that already exists. And we helped Zenzik out with their day in the middle of March in terms of talking about some of the services that we do to do with connected vehicles, particularly for local authorities. I think the other thing is there's a big community now growing of people who are looking at sharing data, but also about services and how to move them from PowerPoints to in-vehicle.
Well, we have continued to review and revise UTMC-funded activities, particularly with the D6 consultation and with ARTIG. And we acknowledge that further work is needed to review the majority of existing historical UTMC documentation and develop work streams to identify what is still good, what needs updating, and what can be retired. UTMC has historically been focused on simple traffic management systems and still does not support rich data integration into the world of public information, open data, connected and automated mobility, public transport, or emergency services. This broader scope needs to be addressed to enable local authorities to get the best out of modern technologies such as AI.
We have been through so many stages of this project, from sort of doing the initial discovery to building a prototype. Now we're in the actual build, and the group is, a real thing as we move towards this being a legal requirement in 2025. So we've done an awful lot of work, but we've got a lot of work still to do.
A lot has been going on in the transport data space, including the Transport Select Committee inquiry into the future of transport data, which has taken up quite a bit of my time. Also developing the transport data strategy. In terms of this group itself, we haven't made as much progress as we would have liked because it's been crowded out by other things. We've continued to think about what we want to do in this space, and we've conducted a mini survey of TTF membership to help inform the future direction of the working group.
So we have moved forward with supporting the National Parking Platform in terms of providing information to both local authorities, suppliers and tech companies that want to integrate with the system. We are working with the National Persistent Evaders Database, NPED, looking at how we can work as a community to make sure those drivers that are not trying to do the correct thing within the system are efficiently dealt with by local authorities and private parking operators. We want to work, or have been working with other technology companies. So we had a presentation around how better to handle blue badge fraud. We've talked to different companies around digitalising the curbside. So there's a lot of work at the moment with the change in legislation around digital traffic management orders or DTROs, so that we can look at how that is integrated back into local authorities and efficiently use that. And then we look at we've been working with companies around how they can use the digital TROs to create virtual loading bays and virtual parking spots so that we more efficiently use the highway.
We have focused over the last year particularly on obsolescence of equipment. A lot of the technology we have has been installed for a number of years and is end of life, or suppliers now have disappeared off the scene, so we can't get spare parts. We also have been a real big push around the carbon usage of some of the technology and trying to get our carbon footprint down. We've also been able to have a look at how we can share and update some of the standards. Datex 2 is a well-known standard, but we want to make sure that it's fit for purpose. And whilst our European colleagues have been doing a lot of work on the upgrades with Datex 2, we want to make sure that it's suitable for the UK as well. And so we've been putting some funding together so that that will sit within one of the TTF working groups.
In November, we published our procurement template, and we have been sort of working on the next template, which is to do with site selection and consultation. So the template that we published in November basically allows the local authorities to look at different commercial models that are available for them to use while procuring a charge point operator, for example, along with list of different legislations, regulations, and also frameworks.
Yes, well, we have a draft work programme for 24-25 that includes a specific work stream to engage with the forthcoming ITF projects. The aim is to monitor and maybe even suggest technical advances that sustain innovation and data exchange, and offer features that can be integrated into the UTMC framework. So we have two main objectives to focus on. The first is to begin to implement the work programme plan. We are, of course, dependent on the continued participation of a broad range of stakeholders from both highway authorities and the systems industry, as well as support from DFT. It will be a challenge to ensure that this is all brought together smoothly and efficiently, and this is where the TTF provides an excellent platform to enable us to draw all this from. The second objective is to establish the UDG management group, who will be responsible for steering advice on UTMC programme priorities and support to outreach activities. Invitations have been issued for a first meeting that will be held alongside the TTF 2024 conference.
The main objectives for the rest of the year are to go into a private beta, which is where you work with those who want to, be part of the trailblazers, if you like, and do more testing and prove the concept.
Our theme for the rest of this year is connect the unconnected. So last year the theme was who's paying for it, and we seem to have made some progress on that. 20 million of ITMF is a good start, but also many of our members are starting to see services being procured, which is good. The connecting the unconnected involves such things as the people who don't know about the services that are available and the data that's available. The unconnected potentially silos that we could avoid, and so we'll be looking at trying to bring together various projects and various data sources. We're also looking at things other than new cars, but also new cars and automotive, and we've not really had as good a strength of bond with the automotive sector as we would have liked, and we were working on that. And the other thing is to make sure that we don't have any silos within TTF. So we've been working very hard with the National Parking Platform. You see their sign behind. So we continue our theme of not just talking about the possible long-term future, but showing how local authorities in particular can have services tomorrow.
Yeah, the rest of the year we're looking at what other opportunities are there within the industry, working very closely with other groups like Connected Vehicle Forum, EV charging, and how that integrates into the total package of people driving, along with further delivering. So I think there are 200 local authorities signed up now or have expressed an interest into the National Parking Platform. And I think the National Persistent Evaders database has started to get its first sets of data going in there. So actually we're starting to see how all of that ecosystem combines and joins together to make a smoother transition for those park drivers who want to pay for parking correctly, and actually how we then support local authorities and private industry to make sure those drivers who don't pay the price accordingly.
The main objective for this year now is, like I said, we will develop a site selection and a consultation template. We will also look to grow our working group database. We will make sure that the representation is across the country really, rather than just certain parts of the country, if you like.
To discuss the findings of the mini-survey, to find out more about what local authorities would find useful. We're also working to develop a resource pack for local authorities and the supply chain, because we've found that there's so much stuff already out there that is of use, however people don't know about it. So we've already started to post links on the TTF website, the open data element of that. We're looking to do something better with that, better signposting. So this kind of point of contact where people, if they want to do something interesting on transport data, they would go to there first, and also look to what use cases we could add to the website.
I think the main thing for Streetwise, as it always has been and always will be, it's all about communication and collaboration. We want to continue to share best practice with all of the members of the Streetwise group. We want to look at some case studies. We want to work with the supply chain in order to deliver more for less, because we all know that our budgets are under severe pressure. But the good news is, being part of the TTF, we see the benefits of this. We think of the Traffic Signals Obsolescence Fund for the English authorities. We think of the Live Labs 2, which is a UK initiative. And some of the benefits from some of these initiatives have really helped. And maybe the fallout of some of the products and some of the innovations around this will help other parts of the UK be able to install these. So again, being part of the TTF family has really helped the Streetwise group.
So there you go. What I particularly liked about that is we see where all the magic happens, don't we, in the background. Now, just to say, those were actually only snippets of longer videos that are on the individual working groups. If they're not actually yet on the website, then they will be. So if you want to find out more about what the groups were set up to do and what their plans are, how they're going to change the world and how you can get involved, all that is on the TTF website. And if it's not, it will be by the time that you get to your office or your home and at your desk, so you can watch it in due course. So thank you very much to our participants here. We haven't got Dave Denner from Streetwise here today, but Streetwise are a slightly different group because they're not quite as open as the other groups where anyone that wants to get involved can get involved. But we've got Matt, we've got Paul, we've got Andy, we've got Sarah, Shamala and Steve up on stage. Now, all but Shamala hosted working group meetings yesterday. The reason the EV charging infrastructure group didn't is because we had a meeting in Bolton back in, I think, February. And so we'd had a specific in-person working group meeting. Very quickly, and literally, we have half an hour. So I just want to run through in a minute or so, any of the highlights from yesterday's meeting. So I'll start with you, Steve. How did your UTMC meeting go?
Okay, thank you, Paul. Yeah, it was a very important meeting for us yesterday because the last time we had a UTMC steering group in active form goes right back to 2018. So it's been a dormant sort of element that we haven't had in place. So it was important yesterday's meeting that we put the governance of UTMC back in place by forming a steering group, which is why we had a closed meeting yesterday, because we were very careful in selecting a balanced representation from local highway authorities, from industry bodies such as ARTSM, Topaz and ARTIG, from national highways and from the devolved authorities. So we get a widespread consensus of what we're doing. And it's a really important role for them, because basically they're going to look at the work program that we do through the course of the year. It's up to them to endorse it, to help us develop it and to deliver it as well. So I'm pleased to say we have got the steering group back in position and in action. We'll meet 4 times a year, twice around the TTF conferences and then 2 virtual meetings. So it's the final piece we needed to put in place so that we can get on with our proposed work program for this year.
Now, as I said, I've been in the industry for nigh on 25 years now, and one of the first things I did was start working with a bloke called Steve George in the Midlands when he was running a really revolutionary information system called Matisse. Now, Steve, you were involved in UTMC from the very beginning. How is it still relevant today?
Okay. I've been around this business far too long. I think I was looking at the ITMF funding and the 8 to 10 projects that will probably come from that. And it reminded me, going back 20-odd years, 24 years, I think, something like that, to the UTMC demonstrator programs that we ran at that time. And the output of those demonstrator projects shaped the UTMC specifications, standards and guidance, some of which is still in use today. And I see potentially the same kind of thing happening with ITMF funding. We're going to have 8 to 10 innovative projects doing good research and development. So there must be a way of bringing that into the UTMC environment so that we can help promote that, what's happening from the output of those projects, and maybe how we can tackle some interoperability issues that may arise from that.
Fabulous. Thanks, Steve. We'll come back to you in a minute. Shamala, we'll come to you in a moment, but I want to next move on to Sarah and the smarter parking. Now, this was really exciting yesterday, turning up and going on. I chose Ringo and others chose different parking apps and were able to register our parking in the car park outside of here. What else was discussed in your meeting?
So yesterday we had 3 different presentations. First one by Toby from Grid, looking at digitalising the curbside, which I think ties in quite nicely with the digitalisation of traffic management orders and the impact that will have on the future. And Toby gave a very good practical example of where it's working in different local authorities and specific examples about when things don't go the way you want them to go. So someone's parked in a loading bay that had already been pre-booked, and how the system manages that via ghost bays, and just a really practical way of demonstrating how it works in practice and the implication of digital TROs on that. I then had a dual hat on, and I presented on behalf of Alan Wood with regards to the National Persistent Evaders database. This week, National Persistent Evaders database has done a spotlight operation and has been running data from a number of private parking companies of vehicles joining the network, and they've looked at around 200,000 vehicles joining the network to see what the level of compliance is of those vehicles. So I was presenting the process and what the roadmap is for the National Persistent Evaders database. And then the third presentation was from a company called Twin, looking at how you combine EV charging with parking charges and how that all integrates. So actually it's a combination of a number of different things and how they all integrate into one part of parking.
Okay. We heard a lot from Michael earlier on about national parking platforms, so we'll hold off on that. But I think, can we just rewind a bit on MPED, because there'll be people in the room that don't know what it is, but it's actually a fantastic sort of one-man mission, literally, to spot people that just ignore the rules.
So MPED is National Persistent Evaders Database, and it's been set up by a gentleman called Alan Wood, and it's looking at vehicles that are non-compliant in a number of areas. So road tax, MOT, insurance, whether they're registered with the DVLA, and looking at how those vehicles, so he's joined up with National Road Policing and the Police Tutelage Service to look at how, if you don't have one of those things, the likelihood of you being involved some level of criminality is higher. How that ties into parking is if you don't have your road tax, MOT or insurance, you're less likely to pay for parking, and looking therefore from a parking perspective at persistent offenders and evaders and the cost to local authorities, and how you link that data across local authorities so that you save money in the way in which you try and collect debt associated with persistent offenders. And also then looking at how, so Alan's also written a white paper to go back into DFT about how the legislation perhaps needs to change to make it simpler for local authorities to manage that process.
Excellent, thank you very much. Andy, you've long talked about, and you touched on in your video, about the collaboration amongst TTF groups, that you're not working in silos. You must be really quite heartened by hearing so much of how the groups are all working together within the banner of the TTF.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, firstly, thanks to George for getting an app so you could be guided here. You're then dropped at the start of the MPP car park, which then showed that we can work this stuff together seamlessly in vehicle. And then we spoke at length in our meeting. I won't call out all of the 8 presentations because we had quite a long one, but we came up with the conclusion this was all about a system of systems. And that system of systems included not just the comms and the vehicle in the car, but the people who are using it. And for example, our sponsors from AECOM talked about how in Ireland they've engaged with users, but also about the funding and also about the skills of people. And we realised that actually we are in danger of being in a silo where we just think about data into vehicles and services into them, when there's much to be shared with the other groups.
Okay, and just I want you to reiterate for people new to TTF, because the conference grows year on year, and so we've always got new people coming here. We've lived with CAV, connected and automated vehicles, for a long, long time, where they've been talked about, and there is this misconception among people when you talk to them that they think that they're one and the same. Can you explain the difference between the two?
Okay. So as Paul says, we talk about connected and autonomous like Starsky and Hutch or Bodie and Doyle, as if they're just internally connected. Connected vehicles are stuff that either receive information or send data, and automated vehicles are one where you could use connectivity in order to drive. You don't necessarily have to, but it's a lot better. Connectivity stops automated vehicles driving into skips and things like that. We have shown, some of the people in this room, including Darren, that a connected vehicle can be of any age. We connected vehicles on the London to Brighton run, built in 1900. We've shown that connected vehicles can be cycles, they can be bicycles, they can be motorbikes. So again, we have this image in our mind, perhaps, that a connected vehicle has to be a Tesla with a big shiny screen. It can actually be something made of wood and leather and steel. Well, it was quite good fun getting up at 4 a.m. It did show it working. And I think also the other thing we have to remember is the average age of a car in the UK is growing. It used to be 7 years, it's now 8 years, it's almost 9 and a bit years. So if we just focus on new cars, and I am a petrol head, I like new cars, but if we just focus on new ones, we're not going to get services to everyone. So that's why we've got this very broad church of connected and autonomous vehicles.
Thank you very much. And talking of average age, the average age in this room is lower than Andy's age. So anyone that would like to come up with new suggestions other than Starsky and Hutch and Bodie and Doyle are more than welcome to have a word with Andy during lunch.
Thank you.
Let's move on, shall we, swiftly. Paul, DTRO, we've had the presentation. How is your group, your working group within TTF, assisting the work that the department is doing?
Well, firstly, Paul, can I just thank you for inviting us onto stage and then making us sit here while you played a video of ourselves. That wasn't embarrassing at all. But secondly, the work of the group is how we get the message out about our activities, basically. So it's kind of a two-stream process, if you like. You've got the people that were with us yesterday, and again, 200 people all told in the room and on the call, and we're broadcasting to those guys, getting loads of great feedback about questions. It's so easy to forget that not everyone knows the sort of the simple stuff, and we need to reiterate those messages and bust those myths, like I said earlier on stage. And then a second smaller working group of the organisations that are going to be involved in the private beta, the software providers, where we're going to have more kind of, intimate discussions about things like spatial referencing and all kinds of fantastic things like that. So yeah, it's those two streams for me, Paul.
Okay, fair enough. And Matt, again, with the data side of things, how did your meeting go?
It went very well. We had a really engaging, positive conversation. It was public sector only because we wanted to have a sort of frank conversation about some sort of future direction we go on data given events potentially this year. We got into some of the details around the headlines that I showed earlier, some of the projects, the discoveries we're up to, and we got some really good initial reactions from the group on that, which can feed back into those discoveries. It's also, we got into kind of what the opportunities were, but also the pain points potentially there for local authorities and what we could potentially do about those. We also had a discussion around where we go next with the data working group. It's had a bit of a false start over the years because we were all ready to go before the COVID stuff. So we're trying to get the momentum back, and we're having to think about how we can best engage that to make it useful for the sector and also for DFT. So we've got different options around that. We also had a really useful presentation from Ian from National Highways about the road closure API stuff, which was kind of news for me. And that, again, that was really helpful because that links in some of the discoveries we're doing as well. So I found it a really useful meeting, and thanks to those who contributed so well. Thank you.
Now, Steve, I mentioned Steve and I worked together on various projects nearly 25 years ago. Steve, Andy and I were all involved in a highways agency, remember them, led project called the Travel Information Highway 20 plus years ago. Now that was an idea of machine to machine exchange of traveller information, be it roads or public transport or whatever, and the idea was that we would all be able to share the data. It wouldn't be a sort of central silo, but we would all have seamless ways of sharing the data between authorities, etc., etc. We're now in 2024 and we're still talking about that sort of thing. Why has it been so difficult to do something that outsiders would think is actually quite a straightforward thing to do? Yes, if possible. I just really need to kind of, get an idea as to what are the complexities, because people who are wanting to take advantage of this and get involved would need to understand what's involved.
So it is complex. The longer you spend in this area, the more complex it gets. I mean, the opportunity, the size of the prize is massive. There's no doubt about that. But in terms of what's actually involved, in terms of making it happen, in terms of making sure that everything's done ethically, that you protect people's privacy, GDPR and all those kind of stuff. You've got the technological aspects, data storage, but also, as a TDS, Transport Data Strategy talks about, there's quite a lot of barriers to data sharing. Because there's a lot of them, there's no silver bullet. And they're kind of, combined commercials around lack of incentives, standards, uncertainty around standards, all those kind of things are well documented and well understood. They kind of softened over the COVID years for a number of different reasons. But again, it's to what extent they continue to be more malleable. We can't do everything at once, and having a kind of centralised system for everything is just a non-starter. It's never going to happen. I mean, it's a cost, resources, the risks and complexities to do that, and it might actually not be the right approach. So, my view is that actually what we're doing is by working with the different modes and different schemes, you know, like we've got Street Manager, we've got Bus Open Data, we've got the Rail Data Marketplace, there's all the work that's going on with digital twins back in the department. All those kind of things can actually get you towards that and have almost constellation, a federated approach, and then you work on the standards and data interoperability to help those things talk to each other going forward, which I think would probably be a more resilient, more effective approach than having one big system that basically would be quite a target potentially as well. And so again, it might be a less risky approach to have, you know, different beasts in the zoo, as it were.
Okay, thank you very much. And Shamala, you didn't have a meeting yesterday, which was fortunate because you were in Parliament having a completely different day yesterday and came up this morning. But we had the meeting in Bolton back in February that was brilliantly attended. What were the key takeaways for you from that meeting?
Yes, so hi everyone. When we had that meeting in Bolton, it was about sort of bringing the local authorities together and showcasing what innovative solutions that are currently coming up in the market in relation to charging, EV charging side of it, like pavement gully or conductive sort of wireless charging, overhead type charging like NODEM, for example. There is a due to the Levi Capability Fund, a lot of new staff or new people have come into the industry, and making these innovative solutions available to them to consider, basically, because it's not just one plug-in solution that is a solution for EV charging. There are other solutions that are equally applicable, so that was showcasing that. And then in the afternoon, we were looking at what the synergies that are between other sort of working groups like parking, for example. Parking and charging very much goes together. Sort of highways, legislations, regulations. So it is just sort of bringing key points out, sort of a discussion point with other local authorities who were present. There was a very good session from taking away perspective. There was quite a bit of takeaways on that day.
Brilliant. So I'm going to we can go down the panel on this next question, I guess. But I'll start with you. What for the local authorities in the room here, and we've got a record number of local authorities in the room. What is in it for them to get involved in the EV charging infrastructure working group?
Solutions. You know, it's not one solution doesn't fit all. So it's understanding what is out there, what legislations are applicable. You know, we are at the moment looking at developing and possibly publishing the site selections. So how do you look at what are the good sites? Because as a local authority, it is the basic principle of providing charging infrastructure for those who don't have off-street parking facility. You know, that is the main ethos for this working group, really. And getting involved will sort of not only you are able to possibly find answers to questions you have, but also get involved in having an input in developing different templates that the working group is currently embarked on.
Okay, Steve, similar question for you. Is the UTMC working group the sort that you will go away and come up with recommendations that then local authorities can implement, or should they be actively taking a role within the group now?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, actually. I think it's probably up to us in the steering group to come up with a work programme that we think is suitable for UTMC, and I think we're heading towards a new generation of UTMC, which we kind of have a working title of UTMC2 put against. But it is vitally important that local authorities do engage with UTMC, do help us shape the work programmes that we're going to do. We've got about 60 plus local authorities and industry players signed up to the working group on TTF. I would urge local authorities to sign up if they're not. That way we can communicate with them. That way we can get them involved with UTMC development, because ultimately we want it to be for their benefit.
I think that's an interesting point, that getting involved in the working groups does not mean you're suddenly filling up your diary with loads of things to do with the working groups, but it's being able to have questions answered when you have them, and having the resource and the right people to go to when you need it, and to know what are the really good solutions that are working that you could implement wherever you're working. A similar question, I guess, for you, Sarah, which is, I can see firsthand, I turned up yesterday, it was great. I did not have to try and go through, as Michael discussed, the myriad of apps on my phone to work out which one. I had this, my daughter lives on the outskirts of Nottingham, she was at university there, and we drove probably 1.5 miles once, and I couldn't understand why I couldn't pay for parking till I realised I'd changed border and was using, and it was a different parking supplier. All that will go, that's great for me. But from a local authority's point of view, what's in it for them?
A couple of things. First thing is probably not having to go through procurement every 3 to 5 years, which comes at not necessarily just a cost of implementing, but a cost of people's time in doing. And then I would probably argue that actually, in terms of one of the biggest groups of people who have joined the Smarter Parking Group are tech companies, app developers, that there is an opportunity for new development within the industry that is would make it far simpler for people to join, as long as they meet the minimum standards of the National Parking Platform. As long as they meet the minimum standards, they can join, and therefore I think development within the app industry for parking, and the way it then connects into different connected vehicles or EV charging, I think will be so much greater, and therefore will give consumers a much better choice of parking apps in the future.
But again, for the supply chain in the room, whether they're involved in parking or not, they're involved in things that they're working very hard, and then they go and win contracts. They win the procurement, they win contracts. Should they be unconcerned, or would you understand if they had concerns? That, for example, I mentioned I use Ringo, and I think I use Ringo because that was the first parking app that I came across, so I'll use that. But if you're Ringo and you've spent millions investing in solutions, and you've gone out and you've won contracts with local authorities for parking, and then suddenly that's going away, is that a commercial concern for them?
Possibly. I'd probably argue they probably spend an equal amount of time and money in responding to procurement bids and procurement in local authority isn't all marked against by parking, it's marked against by procurement teams. So they're trying to answer questions that aren't necessarily directly what the end customer wants. So I think it will save them time and money, and the money they save on that can then future develop the apps that they're developing to better serve the community and the parkers that are using it. So it's just a different, change is always apprehensive. It's just a different way of doing the same thing. But actually trying to take out some of the red tape in the middle, so that actually the time and effort is spent on the end app, not on how you get it to market.
Okay. Andy, regarding connectivity, and I suppose it will come the same with DTROs and data in a moment, which is, this isn't just a local authority area. This, when you cross from one local authority to another, as far as you're concerned, nothing changes. You don't notice it. How is a local authority going to benefit from connectivity, and how should it maybe work with other authorities so that we get a standard across the whole country?
Okay. I think if you're talking about Ringo, you need to point out that other drummers in the Beatles are available.
Very good. Another contemporary reference from Mr. Graham there, everybody.
I offer you the example of Mr. Paul Darlow in Portsmouth City Council, who turned up at one of our connected vehicle group. We showed him some stuff, and then the next time he turned up at the connected vehicle group, we were demonstrating the stuff that he'd developed about 6 months later, which was addressing a number of his policy problems of what happens when the ferry's late and whatever. And many of you will know from Paul, but just in case you don't, that Portsmouth's an island, and it has a motorway that joins it to the rest of the world, and an A road. So in terms of dealing with other road operators, right on the point. So I think, with the risk of upsetting Paul, but go and have a chat with him, I think the other point is that you don't, as a driver, care or even know whose road it's on. And your sat-nav doesn't know or care whose road it's on. And that transferability across borders is really interesting. We've been looking at data between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland because radio waves don't stop at the border. They just go across one to the other in terms of cell phones. So I think have a look at what's been done and some examples which are on the website. But also, the more you can get to talk to your neighbours about getting scale, the easier it is to deploy something. So you don't have an app for insert name of very small local authority, but you have an idea of a service that opens at least at a regional level.
Okay, similar questions for our two DFT representatives at the end of the panel there. Paul and Matt, what's in it for authorities to really embrace the work that you're doing?
I think it's three things for me, Paul. Number one, getting information. So, TTF is going to be the place where we're putting information out there about DTRO. Number two, it is influence. So, we're making decisions over the next few months, and the people that turn up to those meetings will be the one that's, shaping the service. I might be on stage here next year getting a question about why did you do X or Y, and the answer will be formed over the next few months. And the third thing for me is knowledge sharing. So I was reminded of this yesterday when we were doing the working group. We need to come up with a way to enable authorities to talk between themselves about the service. Are you digitally ready? What are you doing? Oh, we're procuring this. We're going to build something ourselves, whatever it might be. So that's a huge part of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to build a community. We don't have a JAG or a Hawk like they do in Streetworks for traffic orders. So we're trying to, bring those people that write the orders and manage the people that write the orders together.
Okay, and Matt?
Yeah, so, local authorities are key delivery partners in data. They're an important part of the transport data ecosystem. It's a massive opportunity to shape the future direction of the discoveries to help feed in what they're going to include, like we did yesterday, and the feed into the actual discoveries themselves, as well as shaping those. It's also an opportunity to feed into the future direction of transport data. We published a transport data strategy last year. There was a huge amount of engagement with local authorities in putting that together. Depending on where we go with the transport data strategy post any election, again, all the kind of conversations I'm having at this event all feed into those kind of conversations and where we're going forward with new ministers, whichever complexion they'll be. It's also, I don't work in a local authority, I work with the Department for Transport, so it's an opportunity for local authorities to express where their pain points are and actually what are their frustrations, what are their concerns, where they potentially need some help from the department. So it's a good opportunity to raise that with us, and we can't promise to be able to answer all the questions and do anything about it, but at least we can have a conversation and see what is actually doable. So there's a really good opportunity there for local authorities to shape things.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Now, there is a saying, hell hath no fury like delegate at the TTF conference being kept from his or her lunch. So consequently, we will wrap up now. I just want to very quickly come back to Andy with a different hat on, which, Andy, you've put cards around about the Rhys Jeffreys Road Fund. In 1 minute, tell us what that's all about.
Okay, so I'm Vice Chair of the Rhys Jeffreys Road Fund. Rhys Jeffreys left a load of money in the 1950s. Some of you might have had your master's degrees sponsored by it. Some of you might have had research projects funded by it. We found in talking to people that there's a gap in that people want to do new skills. Like if you're a transport planner, you want to know about AI, but funding the course to go on it is sometimes a bit of an ask. Funding the travel, the time is kind of your challenge. We have pots of money to try and fund people to go on stuff they wouldn't otherwise be able to do. And the whole idea is it's got to be slightly outside of your initial day job skill set so that you learn something. It's a very simple way to apply. We've got a reasonable pot of money. We'd be delighted if any of you would like to think about the sort of courses that you would like to go on. But equally, if any of you are running or know of courses that might be useful, please let us know. Thank you.
Brilliant, thanks very much. Right, as Darren said earlier on, all of this wouldn't be possible without our commercial partners, and lunch wouldn't be possible without the money spent by the exhibitors. So please go and see them, including those that are out in the lobby who were a bit lonely during the morning coffee, so go and see them as well in the hour and a half. Thank you again to AECOM for funding the working group meetings yesterday, and thank you again to Clearview Intelligence for funding and sponsoring the whole of the event over the 3 days. Enjoy your lunch, and we will be back bang on 1:20, so please start coming in about 1:15 so we can start again at 2, sorry, so we got an hour and a half. So 2:20, you have an hour and a half for lunch. Thank you.